I did not realize my marriage had entered its limited dialogue beta testing phase until a Wednesday night in early April. You know the kind of night I mean, nothing dramatic, no thunder outside, no ominous jazz music playing while your wife stared into the distance like she was about to confess to 3 affairs and a hidden child in Arizona. Just a normal Wednesday. I came home tired, hungry, and carrying the kind of useless work frustration that makes a man desperately want to tell someone about the dumbest meeting ever held in recorded human history. I dropped my keys in the bowl by the door, loosened my tie, and called out, "You won't believe what happened today." My wife, Sophie, was on the couch with her phone in one hand and a blanket over her legs. She did not look up. That was it. Not, "What happened?" Not, "Was it Greg again?" Not even a fake, "Oh no, babe, tell me." Just one tiny bored little sound, the emotional equivalent of a microwave beep. I stood there for a second, still halfway in storyteller mode. "Right," I said. "Cool. So I guess I'll just go tell the wall. At least the wall usually cracks a smile." Nothing. I waited. Maybe she'd look up in a second. Maybe she was finishing a text. Maybe she'd ask. She didn't. So I went into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and stared into it like it had personally betrayed me. A minute later, she walked in, grabbed a sparkling water, and opened it. I leaned against the counter. "So, you're not gonna ask?" She took a sip. "Ask what?" I said, "You won't believe what happened today." And somehow you treated that like background noise from a dishwasher. She shrugged. "I'm tired, Zach." Now, married men know "I'm tired" can mean a lot of things. It can mean, "Today was rough." It can mean, "Please don't start a serious conversation." It can mean, "If you try to initiate anything romantic, I will spiritually leave my body." But this felt different. This felt less like exhaustion, and more like I had just become very uninteresting. I gave her a look. You know, most people at least pretend to care before they stop listening. She rolled her eyes, which was a strong emotional reaction compared to the rest of the evening, and walked out with her drink. I stood there holding a container of leftover pasta like a divorced raccoon. I told myself not to overthink it. Everybody has off days. Maybe hers had been bad. Maybe mine had been annoying. Maybe tomorrow would be normal. Tomorrow was not normal. The next morning, I came into the kitchen while she was making coffee. "Morning," I said. She gave me one small nod. No smile, no morning, no "Want some coffee?" No, "I had the weirdest dream." Nothing, just a nod. I stopped mid-step. "Was that a greeting, or did you just acknowledge my existence like I'm airport security?" She poured coffee into her mug. I said good morning with the nod. With the nod? Yes. I stared at her. "Sophie, you can't outsource conversation to body language and still call it marriage." That got me half a glance. Then she picked up her mug and walked away. At work, I kept replaying it, which annoyed me because I had actual problems to deal with, like clients, deadlines, and Greg from operations, who was living proof that leadership is mostly a rumor. By lunch, I had decided I was imagining it. By dinner, I knew I wasn't. That night, I tried again. Not a fight, not a confrontation, just regular conversation. I made pasta, opened a bottle of wine, and figured maybe if I acted normal, normal would come back out of guilt. We sat down. I told her about a guy at work who used the phrase, "Let's circle back," 6 times in one meeting, and somehow still said nothing of substance. I even did the guy's voice. Usually Sophie would laugh at that kind of thing. This time? Yeah. That was her full review. I set down my fork. "That's it? Just yeah?" She kept eating. "What do you want me to say?" "Oh, I don't know. Maybe literally anything that suggests you heard words and not wind." "I heard you. Then I'm even more concerned." She sighed. "Zach, not every conversation has to become a performance review." "True. Some of them just die quietly in the dining room." She gave me a tired look again. "Can we not do this?" And there it was, the little trick buried under the coldness. I leaned back in my chair and studied her for a second. Sophie was not upset in the obvious way. She wasn't angry, not openly. She wasn't crying. She wasn't slamming cabinets or picking fights over nothing. She wasn't acting guilty either, which would have at least been interesting. She was simply absent. Like someone had turned her personality brightness down to 4%, but only for me. That detail became impossible to ignore over the next few days. Monday morning. Want me to grab dry cleaning on the way home? I guess. Monday night. You remember we're supposed to go to my cousin's thing next Saturday? Maybe. Tuesday evening. Did you ever call the plumber? No. No explanation. No follow-up. No warmth. Just these tiny, miserable scraps of communication tossed in my direction like I was a pigeon she didn't technically hate. And the weird part? She was not like that with her phone. That was the first thing that really got under my skin. Because I'd be in the same room, getting the conversational energy of a parking meter, while she sat there smiling at something on her screen. Not smiling politely, not smirking vaguely, actually smiling. One night I walked into the living room and heard her laugh. I stopped in the doorway. Oh wow, so the vocal cords still work. She looked up too late, the smile still halfway on her face. What? Nothing. Just nice to know you're not in witness protection. She locked her phone and set it face down. You're being weird. I gave a short laugh. That is a fascinating opinion coming from someone who's been answering me like an irritated GPS for a week. She crossed her arms. I'm not doing anything. I nodded slowly. And that sentence, right there, is usually how I know somebody is definitely doing something. She stood up, grabbed her phone, and walked past me. I'm taking a shower. Tell the shampoo you had a great day, I called after her. Apparently it's getting more from you than I am. The bathroom door shut. I stood there alone again and rubbed a hand over my face. Look, I am not one of those guys who needs constant attention. I don't need my wife hanging on every sentence like I'm delivering the Gettysburg Address over chicken parm. But there's a difference between not being the center of someone's world and being treated like a human push notification. By the end of week 1, I stopped asking myself what was wrong. I started asking myself whether she had been replaced by a very quiet intern. I tested it a little after that. Nothing dramatic. Just observation. If I asked a practical question, I got one-word answers. If I made a joke, she barely reacted. If I spoke about my day, she seemed like she was waiting for the sentence to end so she could return to whatever was apparently happening in that glowing rectangle in her hand. But if her phone buzzed? Different woman. Alive, engaged, responsive, human. I noticed she'd turn slightly away sometimes when she typed. Not enough to make it theatrical, just enough for instinct to notice. One Saturday morning, I was making eggs when she walked into the kitchen already texting, smiling again. I looked at her over the stove. Good news from the outside world? She sat on a stool. Just talking. With whom? She shrugged. People. I let out a dry laugh. Strong answer. Very FBI. She didn't smile. Why do you care? That landed wrong immediately. Why do I care? My wife had become emotionally unavailable in my general direction for days, and now I was supposed to act like asking a basic question was some kind of privacy invasion? I turned the stove off and faced her fully. Let me save us both time, I said. I care because when I talk to you, I get the warmth of a tax audit, but apparently everybody in your phone gets the deluxe package. Her expression hardened just a little. You're exaggerating. No, I'm noticing. You always do this. I almost laughed at that. Do what? Use pattern recognition? This thing where every mood becomes a problem. I pointed lightly at her with the spatula. No, let's not do that. If you're upset, say you're upset. If something's wrong, say something's wrong. But don't act like talking to your own husband is an exhausting side quest and then call me dramatic for noticing. She stood up. I'm not having this conversation. And she walked out. Of course she did. That became her move too. Not a full argument. Not even denial with effort. Just withdrawal. Exit stage left. I plated the eggs and ate alone in the kitchen. Then, because I'm not stupid and because patterns matter, I started paying attention to timing. Sophie had always been close with her friend Natalie. I knew that. They texted a lot, sent each other voice notes, links, screenshots, all the usual modern friendship debris, but lately it was more frequent and more synchronized. A buzz, a smile, a buzz, typing, a pause, little grin. Then later, with me, fine, maybe, okay. It started to feel less random and more chosen. That thought irritated me more than anything else, because if she'd been overwhelmed, depressed, stressed, angry, fine. Those are real things. We could deal with those. But if she was fully capable of warmth, attention, and engagement, and was simply choosing not to direct any of it at me, that was different. That wasn't emotional struggle. That was a decision. The moment that really flipped the switch happened on a Wednesday night. I got home earlier than usual. She didn't hear me come in. She was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, phone on speaker for just a second before she picked it up. I heard her laugh and say, "No, he still has no clue." Then she turned, saw me, and ended the call so fast it practically smoked. We stared at each other. I put my laptop bag down very slowly. No clue about what? Too quick. Nothing. I tilted my head. That sounded exactly like something. It was just Natalie. Great. Then Natalie can probably explain why my wife sounds more alive talking to her than she has with me in 14 days. She rolled her eyes. You're counting days now? I didn't have to. My nervous system did it for me. She folded her arms. You're making this bigger than it is. Interesting, because right now, from where I'm standing, it appears to be my wife acting like she's stuck in a hostage video every time I enter the room. Can you stop being theatrical for 1 second? I laughed once, no humor in it. Can you start being honest for 1 second? That made her jaw tighten. You've been distant, I said. So which is it? Are you mad at me, or are you doing some weird passive-aggressive thing because your friend had another genius idea? She stared at me. There it was. Tiny. Brief, but real. A pause too long, eyes narrowing just a little. The face of someone who did not expect that dart to land that close to the board. I pointed at her with an open hand. Yeah, that look right there? That's the first honest thing I've gotten all week. She grabbed a glass from the drying rack. You're impossible. And you're suddenly impossible to talk to, so I guess we're collecting talents. She set the glass down too hard. Maybe I just needed space. Then say that. I shouldn't have to spell everything out. No, apparently you prefer interpretive cruelty. She scoffed, grabbed her phone, and headed for the hallway. I watched her go and said, calm and clear, "Whatever game this is, Sophie, it's getting old." She didn't turn around. That night, I sat in my car in the driveway for 10 extra minutes after grabbing something from the trunk. And I did what every married man does when domestic life starts smelling weird. I called somebody who would tell me if I was crazy. Ryan picked up on the third ring. "Hey," he said. "What's up?" "Random question," I said. "That tone says it's not random." "Fair. Is your wife acting weird lately?" There was a pause. Then he said, "Define weird." I leaned back against the car door and looked at my front window. "Quiet," I said. "Distant. Answers like she's being charged by the syllable. Emotionally unavailable, but somehow still fully operational for everyone else." Ryan exhaled once through his nose. Then he said, "Like she's buffering?" I straightened a little. "Exactly like she's buffering." He was quiet again, and when he spoke next, his voice had changed. Lower, sharper. "Dude," he said, "that's been Natalie for the last week and a half." "What kind of stuff?" He let out a humorless laugh. "What kind of stuff?" "Man, take your pick. I say good morning. She nods like I'm a crossing guard. I ask how her day was. I get fine. I try to make conversation at dinner, and she responds like I'm customer service calling after a warranty claim. I closed my eyes for a second. Same pattern, same shape. Ryan kept going, clearly relieved and irritated in equal measure now that somebody else was speaking the language. And the kicker? She's perfectly normal with her phone, smiling, typing, sending voice notes, whatever. With me, you'd think I personally ruined music. I laughed once, stunned more than amused. Sophie too. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. Then Ryan asked, "You think it's us?" I thought about that. If it had only been my house, maybe. Maybe I'd said something wrong. Missed something. Maybe there'd been tension building and I hadn't caught it early enough. But two wives, same timing, same behavior, same sudden emotional frost with nearly identical symptoms? That was not normal married turbulence. That was a format. "I don't think this is random," I said. "Sophie and Natalie have been texting nonstop." Ryan let out a breath. "Well, that's not suspicious at all." I rubbed my jaw. "Did Natalie say anything before it started? About needing distance or resetting something?" He gave a short, bitter laugh. "Actually, yes. A few vague lines about not wanting to reward unhealthy dynamics, which is therapist language for, 'I read something stupid and now we all suffer.'" I stared at the windshield. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was so stupid it had become elegant. "Oh, you have got to be kidding me," I muttered. "What?" "I don't know exactly what this is yet, but I'd bet money it started as one of those poisonous little coffee date ideas. You know, the kind that sounds empowering if you say it with enough confidence and zero accountability." Ryan snorted. "Like what? Stop emotionally feeding men and make them earn access to your energy?" "Yes, that exact species of nonsense." He laughed harder now. "Dude, that sounds uncomfortably possible." "It sounds extremely possible." He was quiet for a second, then said, "So what do we do?" That was the question, wasn't it? A week earlier, I probably would have said confront them, demand answers, drag the whole thing into the light and force a discussion. But as I stood in the driveway, another thought occurred to me. A colder one. And better. I looked at the house again, then smiled without humor. "I've got an idea," I said. "Dude, if this is some kind of coordinated teach your husband a lesson thing, I swear—" "It is," I cut in. Silence. Then, "You're sure?" "No," I said, "but I'm also not blind." Then Ryan said, "So, they talked." "Yeah," I said, "they definitely talked. And now they're both doing the same thing." "Yeah." He let out a slow breath. "That's not coincidence." "No," I said, "that's a plan." Ryan laughed again, but there was something colder in it now. "Man, that's actually kind of impressive." "Yeah," I said, "except nobody told them we're not lab rats." Ryan was quiet again, then asked, "So what do we do? Call it out?" I thought about Sophie's face earlier, the way she shut down, the way she deflected, the way she walked away instead of engaging. If I confronted her directly, she'd either deny it, flip it, or drag it into a vague emotional argument where suddenly I was the problem. And honestly, I wasn't in the mood to play defense in a game I didn't sign up for. So I said, "No. Explain." "They're expecting something," I said. "Right?" "Yeah, probably." "They pull back, go cold, act distant. What's the expected result?" Ryan answered immediately. "We chase. We ask what's wrong. We try to fix it. More attention, more effort." "Exactly," I said. "We lean in harder." He was quiet for a second, then I could practically hear the realization settle in. "So we don't." I smiled a little. "We don't." Ryan let out a slow breath. "We just let it run?" "We let them run it," I said. "No confrontation, no chasing, no emotional speeches, nothing." "And do what? Sit there in silence like monks?" "No," I said. "We adapt." "To what?" "To reality," I replied. "If they want distance, we give them distance." Ryan chuckled. "That sounds dangerous." "It is," I said. "For them." He laughed again, this time genuinely. "Oh man. Okay. I like where this is going." "Good," I said, "because I'm not playing a game where the rules are hidden And the goal is to make me feel like I'm failing. So we just mirror it? He asked. Not even mirror, I said. We disengage. How far? I looked at the house again. Inside, Sophie was probably on her phone, smiling, typing, being a fully functioning human being, just not with me. Far enough, I said, that if this is a test, we stop trying to pass it. Ryan went quiet. Then, damn. Yeah, another pause. Then he said, Day 1 starts tomorrow? I smirked. No. Why not? Because for me, I said, it already started 2 weeks ago. He laughed under his breath. Fair enough. I opened the car door, then stopped. One more thing, I said. Yeah? No slipping, I said. No just this once conversations. No emotional ambushes. We stay consistent. Ryan didn't hesitate. Agreed. Good. Hey, Zach? Yeah? If this blows up, I'm blaming you. I grinned. If this works, you're buying the first round. He laughed. Deal. We hung up. I stood there for a second longer, then walked back into the house. Sophie was exactly where I expected her to be. On the couch, phone in hand, soft light on her face, completely absorbed in something that wasn't me. She glanced up as I walked in. Hey, she said. I looked at her for a moment. Before, I would have tried to fill that silence, start a conversation, bridge the gap. Now, I just nodded once and walked past her. That was the moment it shifted. The first couple of days felt strange, not painful, not dramatic, just unfamiliar. Turns out when you stop trying to fill every silence, you suddenly notice how loud it actually is. Thursday morning, I walked into the kitchen. Sophie was already there, scrolling through her phone, coffee in hand. Normally, I would have said something, tried to start something resembling a conversation. Instead, I grabbed a mug, poured my own coffee, and said nothing. She glanced at me, waited. After a few seconds, she said, Morning. I nodded. Morning. And that was it. No follow-up, no questions, no attempt to extend it into something else. I just drank my coffee. She lingered a second longer than usual, then went back to her phone. That same evening, I got home later than usual. Not because I had to, but because I could. I grabbed a burger on the way, sat there longer than necessary, and enjoyed the simple, peaceful experience of eating food without having to carry a conversation on my back like unpaid emotional labor. When I got home, Sophie was on the couch again, same position, same phone, same soft glow. She looked up. You're late. I took off my jacket. Yeah. She blinked. That's it? I shrugged lightly. Yeah. And walked past her. I could feel it then. That slight confusion. That tiny crack in expectation. Later that night, she came into the bedroom while I was already in bed, scrolling through something on my own phone. She stood there for a second. You didn't text, she said. I looked up briefly. About? That you'd be late. I tilted my head slightly. Didn't think it mattered. That landed. Her expression shifted just a fraction. Well, it's just normal to say something. I held her gaze for a second, then gave a small nod. Got it. And went back to my phone. No apology, no explanation, no correction. She stood there another second longer than necessary, then got into bed. That was day 1 of the new dynamic. Day 3 was when it started getting interesting. Ryan called me in the evening. Well, he said. How's monk life? I smirked. Peaceful. You? He laughed. Dude, she asked me if I was okay. Oh, that's fast. Right? He said. I've been quiet for like 2 days and suddenly I'm the mysterious one. I shook my head, smiling. Funny how that works, he continued. Natalie literally said, You've been distant. I let out a short laugh. No way. Word for word. Same script, I said. Exactly. We were both quiet for a second, letting that settle. Then Ryan added, You know what's wild? I didn't even do anything extreme, I just stopped trying. Yeah, I said. Turns out effort imbalance is very noticeable when one side pulls back. No kidding. I leaned back in my chair. Any change in her behavior otherwise? She's paying more attention, he said. Like watching me more, trying to start small conversations. I smiled slightly. Same here. Really? Yeah, I said. Nothing big, just more awareness. Ryan let out a low whistle. Man, that's almost disappointing. Why? I thought we'd get at least a week before the cracks showed. I chuckled. Give it time. This is just phase 1. What's phase 2? He asked. I thought for a second. Confusion turns into effort, I said. Then effort turns into frustration when it doesn't work. Ryan laughed. You sound like you've run this experiment before. I haven't, I said. But I understand incentives. He paused. You think they realize we know? No, I said. And that's the best part. We talked a bit more, mostly joking, then hung up. After that call, I started leaning into it more naturally. Not as a strategy anymore. As a lifestyle adjustment. If I was already being treated like an optional extra in my own marriage, I might as well stop auditioning for the lead role. Saturday morning, Sophie found me getting ready to go out. Where are you going? She asked. I checked my watch. Out. She frowned slightly. Out where? I shrugged. Around. She crossed her arms. That's vague. I looked at her for a second, then gave a small nod. Yeah. And went back to tying my shoes. She didn't move. You usually tell me, she said. I stood up, grabbed my keys. Do I? I just thought, she started. Hey, I said calmly, cutting in just enough. If it's important, I'll mention it. Then I walked past her and out the door. In the car, I actually laughed. Not because this was funny, but because it was so predictable. They pull back expecting a reaction. They get none. Now they don't know what to do with that. That afternoon, Ryan texted me, Day 5, still alive, considering introducing myself again just to reset expectations. I replied, don't rush it. You might scare her. He sent back a laughing emoji. Later that night, I got home and found Sophie in the kitchen. She looked up immediately when I walked in, faster than usual. You were gone a while, she said. I nodded. Yeah. She tapped her fingers lightly on the counter. So, what did you do? I opened the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water. Stuff. She stared at me. Stuff? I took a sip. Yeah. That silence stretched, longer than before. Then she let out a small breath, half annoyed, half confused. Okay, she said, and turned away. I watched her for a second, not angry, not emotional, just recalibrating. That's when it really clicked for me. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about me finally stepping out of a dynamic I didn't even realize I'd been maintaining. Because once you stop over-investing in someone who's under-investing in you, the whole structure starts to wobble. And it was definitely wobbling now. By the end of the first week, the pattern was clear. She initiated more. I responded less. She watched more. I explained nothing. And somewhere in between, the balance flipped. And that's when things always get interesting. Because confusion is temporary, but loss of control, that one sticks. By the second week, it stopped feeling like an experiment. It just became normal. Ryan and I didn't even have to discuss the plan anymore. We'd already said everything that mattered. They pulled back. We matched it. No speeches, no emotional essays, no, we need to talk. Day 10, Ryan called me again. She tried to start a real conversation, he said. I leaned back in my chair. Define real. She asked how my day was, like actually asked. Eye contact and everything. I smirked. And? I said fine and kept eating. I let out a short laugh. Proud of you. She didn't like that. Of course she didn't. He exhaled. It's weird, man. 2 weeks ago she could barely give me a full sentence. Now suddenly she's trying. Yeah, I said. Funny how effort shows up when it's not guaranteed anymore. Ryan was quiet for a second. You think they realize what's happening? No, I said. They just feel it. What? Loss of control. That same evening, Sophie tried something new. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, when she came in and sat next to me. That alone was new. So, she said. I glanced at her briefly. Yeah? I was thinking maybe we could do something this weekend. I nodded slowly. Maybe. She blinked. Maybe. Yeah. She studied my face. You're being weird. I gave a small shrug. Am I? Yes. I nodded. Okay. And went back to my phone. That one hit harder. I could feel it. Not because I was being rude, but because I was doing exactly what she'd been doing. And now it felt different from her side. Zach, she said, a little sharper. I looked up again. Yeah? She frowned. What's going on with you? I held her gaze for a second. Nothing, I said. Her expression tightened. That's not true. I tilted my head slightly. You sure? She stared at me. That moment where she expected more. An explanation. A reaction. Something to grab on. I gave her nothing. After a few seconds, she exhaled and leaned back. This is annoying, she muttered. I almost smiled, because that was the first honest sentence in weeks. Later that night, Ryan texted me. Day 12. She asked if I'm upset. I said no. She didn't believe me. I replied, good. That means it's working. He sent back, this feels illegal. Me, only because it's new. By the middle of the second week, both of them had clearly shifted. More questions, more attention, more attempts to reconnect. But here's the thing, they didn't admit anything, not once. No, hey, I've been distant. No, sorry, I pulled away. No, I tried something and it backfired. Nothing. They just tried to quietly restore what they themselves had broken, without acknowledging it. And that's where Ryan and I made the same silent decision. We weren't going to help them fix it. Because this wasn't about punishing them. It was about making the point stick. Day 14, Sophie finally snapped a little. We were in the kitchen. She was cooking. I was leaning against the counter, checking something on my phone. You've been acting distant, she said. I nodded once. Have I? She frowned. Yes. I thought about that for a second, then gave a small shrug. Okay. Her eyes narrowed slightly. That's all you're gonna say? I met her gaze, calm as ever. What do you want me to say? That question hung there. Because now it was her turn to define the problem. And suddenly, it wasn't so easy anymore. By week 3, the pattern flipped completely. Sophie talked more. I didn't. She asked questions. I gave short answers. That was the whole game now. Ryan texted me. Day 18. She asked if I still care. I said, sure. That did not go well. Me. Good. Let it sit. Same script. Different house. At home, Sophie was watching me more than she was watching her phone now. Trying to figure out what changed. One evening, she sat across from me and just looked. You're different, she said. I nodded. Yeah. That's it? She asked. Yeah. Her jaw tightened. This isn't funny. I'm not laughing. Then she leaned forward. Are you doing this on purpose? I met her eyes. Doing what? That irritated her. This, she said, gesturing vaguely. Whatever this is. I thought for a second, then gave a small shrug. I adjusted. That word landed. Harder than anything else. Adjusted to what? She asked. To what you showed me. She went quiet. Later that night, Ryan called. She tried to start a fight, he said. Of course she did. Yeah, I didn't take it. Good, he paused. Man, this is wild. Not really, I said. It's just the same behavior from the other side. He let out a breath. You think they get it yet? I thought about Sophie's face. That moment in the kitchen. That shift. Yeah, I said. They're starting to. Back home, Sophie was quieter again, but not cold, not distant, careful. That was new. And that's when I knew we were close, because confusion turns into effort. Effort turns into frustration. And frustration? That's where the truth finally comes out. By the end of week 3, things didn't go back to normal. They tried to. More talking, more attention, small attempts to reconnect like nothing had happened. But something was off, because now we weren't filling the gaps anymore, and they felt it. The 30th day has arrived. Ryan invited us over. Casual, drinks, nothing special. Sophie didn't question it, just said, sure, like everything was normal again. Natalie opened the door, smiling like a hostess in a commercial. Hey guys! Warm, friendly, fully human again. Interesting how that worked. We sat down, drinks were poured, small talk started, safe topics, work, weather, some random story about a neighbor's dog. You'd think nothing had happened. You'd think the last month didn't exist. Ryan and I exchanged one look. That was enough. He leaned back in his chair and said casually, "So, how's the distance experiment going?" Silence. Sophie blinked. Natalie froze for half a second too long. "Excuse me?" Natalie said, a little too quickly. Ryan smiled slightly. "You know, the whole pull back, don't engage, let them chase thing." Sophie looked at me. What is he talking about? I didn't rush. Took a sip of my drink. Set it down. Then, same thing you've been doing for the last 30 days. Now it was quiet for real. Natalie let out a small laugh. "I think you guys are reading into—" "No," I said calmly. "We're not." Ryan nodded. "Same timing, same behavior, same phrases," I added. "Same sudden lack of energy for your husbands, while somehow having plenty for everyone else." Sophie's face tightened. "That's not what this was." I looked at her. "Then what was it?" She opened her mouth and stopped. Natalie jumped in, faster now. "We just needed space." Ryan nodded slowly. "Together?" Silence. I leaned back. "You coordinated it," I said. "You talked, you agreed, you ran the same script." No one interrupted this time, because they couldn't. Sophie looked at me. "You didn't even ask." I gave a small shrug. "Didn't need to." Ryan added. "We compared notes." That landed. Hard. Natalie's expression changed first, then Sophie's. That moment when the ground shifts and they realize they weren't the only ones thinking. "You were supposed to react," Natalie said quietly. Ryan let out a short laugh. "Yeah, that was the idea, right?" I nodded. "Chase, ask, try harder." Sophie looked at me. "And you just didn't care?" I continued, same calm tone. "You pulled back, so I stopped filling the gap." Natalie looked between us. "So this was, what, revenge?" I shook my head. "No." Ryan smirked slightly. "More like feedback." I leaned forward just a bit. "You wanted distance," I said. "You taught us how to live with it." Neither of them spoke, because there wasn't a clean way out of it. No angle to spin, no easy excuse. Just the reality sitting there. I stood up, grabbing my jacket. Ryan did the same. Sophie looked at me. "That's it?" I paused, looked at her one last time. "You ran a 30-day test," I said calmly. "I got my answer on day 10. And with that, we left. Not angry, not loud, just done playing. Give them time to think about what was wrong with their stupid ideas. The next few days were different. Quieter, but not cold. Sophie tried to talk more. Not the old automatic version of it, but careful, deliberate. Like someone who finally realized silence has a cost. Ryan told me it was the same on his side. Natalie backed off the strategies, started acting normal again. No buzzwords, no experiments, just conversation. No one ever officially admitted anything. No big apology speeches, no dramatic confessions. But they both knew. They pushed too far. And for the first time, they saw what it actually felt like on the other side. Sophie said it once, a few nights later. "I think we overdid it." I looked at her for a second. "Yeah," I said. "You did." She nodded. No argument, no defense. And that was enough. Because nobody wanted to run that test again. If you felt this story hit hard, drop a like, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps Steelheart beating.